Welcome to another episode of Veteran Success Story. This next episode, I wanted to deviate from the normal format here, just due to, I know that this is going to be controversial for a lot of people. I'm probably going to catch some shit for putting this episode out there. One thing to be sure of, I go ahead, don't follow. Don't listen to this particular episode. But honestly, this is an issue within the veteran space, and it's something that I have a voice out there, and I'm going to let it be used within the veteran community in order to spread information, spread knowledge, and put a face to an issue that is within the veteran community and that a group within the veteran community is facing right now. So, without further ado, going to be going into the intro and then into the episode for Patricia King, who is the first transgender person to serve within the military in the capacity as an infantry soldier. So thank you for joining us today, and this is Veteran Success Story. What if you were part of a segment within the population that has been persecuted throughout history, but had started to make progress, only to be discredited and belittled once more? What if your options to carve out a brighter future for yourself while in service to your country was stripped away while being attacked in a prejudiced manner under the guise of freedom and democracy? Join me as I talk with veteran Patricia King about her journey as the first openly transgender soldier to serve in the U.S. Army Infantry and her struggle to successfully continue service despite the oppositions she faced in 2017. This is Veteran Success Story. Welcome to yet again another Veteran Success Story. Today I'm speaking with Patricia King, who is the first transgender person serving in the military within an infantry capacity. So welcome to the show, Patricia. It's great to have you.
Hey, well, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
So, man, I know we spoke about some of the things going on prior. I know that I saw a bit of the writing on the wall, and I know I reached out to one of the organizations. I want to say, I know there's a few of them out there, but I want to say it was Modern Military.
Yep.
That put us in touch. But just due to your background in the infantry, my background in the infantry and stuff, I was like, this is going to be great. This is a good way to talk to someone about these issues, to where it has a background where I can relate. I have, that was most of my military career was it within that combat arms side of things within the infantry. It's something I know well. I also served within the period to where the repeal for Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened. And then I was in there when Trump took office again. And then basically, from how I understand it anyway, from the research and stuff I did for this episode, is you were pretty much fired from the military off of a tweet, which...
That was the goal. In 2018, Donald Trump sent a pair of tweets, or a series of tweets, that indicated that he thought trans service members were not conducive with the military, and that was how he told the world they planned to remove us from service. Since then, we had the opportunity to litigate it, and I was able to serve all the way until my retirement in 2019.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, that gives some hope there that there's avenues of approach that people can take right now in order to try and, I guess, either mitigate, safeguard. I know right now it probably seems like a bit late. I know this morning I was talking with someone that I know they're at a higher level capacities, someone I served with at one point, and I was like, what do you think of trans people in the military? What's your experience? And he was like, there's a lot of them aren't out even still. Like, we know, it was kind of the same way when I was in, and there was, someone who was homosexual on that side, but you couldn't serve openly as homosexual. Everybody knew. Nobody really cared. It didn't matter because everyone was mission capable. That was the focus. And I know they say things right now, they're putting this rhetoric to where it's like, this is based on on performance and merit, not DEI. And it's like, do you think that everyone that's in right now didn't go through those hoops, didn't prove themselves to be able to serve? And matter of fact, I mean, the stats are crazy. Just that, your average citizen within the United States, what is it, 1% join up in the military, but it's that community segment of trans people is 20% is serving within the military. So, I mean, it's a higher capacity to serve. And not only that, but I mean, they fill a lot of the support roles that are supporting combat arms, but you as well, you served in a combat arms capacity. You were held to the same standards as everyone else, and you served with honor, with distinction. Like, it blows my mind.
I want you to consider, well, right now, there's likely trans service members, there are probably trans women and trans men who are in combat arms units who are probably training right now. They're out in the field. Maybe they're in Louisiana training, for their next mission. They're running and gunning the same way you did, the same way I did. They're, loaded up full combat load, and they're training with their battle buddies. And there's a possibility that they're being pulled out of training right now, taken away from their training exercise to be told, because if they're in the field, they haven't heard this. And they're probably being taken out of the field so that they can be told what's happening. Their squad members are waiting for them to come back so they can run a live fire exercise or do a training. And when they get back, they're still going to train because they haven't been told that they can't stay yet. They're going to have to shake that off. They're going to have to get back in formation, and they're going to have to go run that exercise again. When their battle buddies, when their subordinates, when their soldiers hear this, they're not going to be happy that this trans person might have to leave. They're going to wonder what they're going to do without Sergeant King. They're going to wonder what they're going to do without their machine gunner. They're going to wonder what they're going to do without their ISR operator. For them, this isn't about trans. This is about their battle buddy. This is about serving. And thousands of service members are doing the job right now, and are being told that somehow the job that they're doing is insufficient because of who they are,
Yeah. I mean, 15,000 service members, and with the military already having a recruiting issue, and this is something else that I've talked with about, like, due to either, I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that medical records are digitized and follow people more, so that now the recruiters can't be, a lot of that was, and we all have those stories, or we've heard those stories before, with the recruiter, like, have you ever smoked marijuana before? Yeah, I have. No, you haven't. What do you mean? I just told you, no, you haven't. But is there anything that you can kind of, at least someone who's listening, who's trans, might be, kind of reaching out, listening to this as a bit of hope and stuff right now? Is there anything that you can give as a piece of advice to someone who might be the one getting pulled out of the field to hear this?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're a part of a marginalized community, when you're a part of a smaller community, consider veterans, right? If you read the news and somebody committed a crime and that person is a veteran is going to follow the headline, right? Army veteran commits this crime. If a trans person does something, that title gets attached to who they are. So
Mm-hmm.
for trans service members right now, the first thing I would tell them is it's time to go to work. Until somebody tells you that you can't, your job is to do your job with honor, with integrity, the way that we know that you can, is to follow your service values and to keep trucking on until somebody tells you you can't. And then we're going to figure out how to make sure you can. We have networks of people who are looking at these issues from all angles and figuring out how we can best serve you, and nobody's giving up on you.
Yeah, that's really heartening to hear. I mean, that's oh man, again, like this, it's unfortunate that we even have to get on here to talk about this, and I know one of the arguments is that, I think the main argument that they say, there's a lot more in there. And again, we were just talking about the verbiage within the executive order, but a lot of what's touted publicly is that, oh, this care costs too much for this group of people, the turnover time and everything else. And it's like, if you look at the cost of what a month of estradiol costs. The military, I think that might be another misconception that people have out there, is that the military they're not paying for these surgeries. They're not paying, they pay for hormone therapy, or at least currently right now. Like that's my knowledge anyway of it. And it's not something that's super expensive.
So, the military currently does cover many forms of trans care, but let's really look at it well. First of all, trans care amounts to about $630 a year per soldier or service member. So $630. But more importantly, when you start talking about a particular medical condition, a particular medical thing, we talk about the current executive order policy addresses a number of things. It talks about time to return to readiness. Whether you're looking at a service member who was playing frisbee football for PT in the morning and rolled their ankle and something like that, or a service member who maybe they went on leave and hurt themselves snowboarding, broke their collarbone, maybe a service member who had a pregnancy that had some complications at the end. All of these things are medical conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of those things is a medical condition, and treating those medical conditions is the cost of having the best and brightest serve, right? We give them the medical care that their doctor determines that they need. We treat them and we get them back to the force as fast as possible. That's what we do. So suggesting that this particular medical decision should be made by somebody other than a doctor and is somehow different than the medical decision that I just described is disingenuous, right? Yeah. It doesn't address the facts. It doesn't address the reality that trans care is not expensive. It is not invasive, certainly not any more than the other routine types of medical care that service members will receive throughout the course of their career.
You're absolutely right there. That is, the cost is not the issue here. This is something to where it's being touted as the issue. I can understand a little bit. I know, again, this is where this came from this particular members serving in the military right now. But they were talking about the transitionary period. He was like, well, I guess his thoughts, or at least his particular reasoning behind it, is that you have to pull someone off the line, due to the fact that they're transitioning, which is just, I don't think that's they don't. Do you want to go into your story on, like, you were, a staff sergeant, right, at the time, to when you came out within the service? Okay.
Yep.
Do you want to go into that and go into, how your service was affected, like what your job was at the time and how your service was affected, and if it put any gaps in there to where you couldn't do your job basically because of, I guess, something that would be a conflict?
Absolutely. And whether it be a reenlistment opportunity to take 6 months off from college, whether it be the need to go get your braces so that you can get your teeth fixed and perhaps have some time of non-deployability, but have to remove your braces if that comes up. There are any number of things that for a small period of time may take a soldier off the line so that they can improve themselves and come back to the line better. So for me, and another thing I want to cover is that transgender care is not standardized. There's not a set path for every transgender person.
Yeah.
I often say it's a la carte, and it's about what a patient and a doctor determine is the right amount of care for that patient. Mm-hmm. And it will be different for every single patient. So for me, my journey started at a very young age. At 8 years old, I knew I was trans. And I lived with it and lived in the closet until I was about 35. And it was something that I hid in part because I wanted to continue to serve in the military. So I just put it off for as long as I could and said, you know what, I'll ignore this thing about myself because I love my country and I love my job. But in 2015, that became kind of untenable, and I determined that I had to come out. And when I did come out, it was at the time that policies were starting to shift. Pardon me for a second.
No worries.
Okay. When I did come out, it was at a time when policies were starting to shift. And for me, what that meant was I was going to be allowed to serve authentically, but they were still figuring out the military medical policies. Eventually, they started covering hormone replacement therapy for trans people. And it's important to note that the military has been covering hormone replacement therapy for cisgender people for any number of medical conditions for a year, for
Yeah.
years rather. Been covering that care for years. And so the medications, the treatments, they were all in inventory. And they had medical professionals who were very familiar with trans. They have endocrinologists within the military system who are all trained in civilian hospitals and civilian institutions, and they know how to treat trans people. So when I started, I went to an endocrinologist. They did my labs, they gave me my medication, and the only thing that stopped that happened at that point was in 3 months I had to go back and get a blood draw so they could check my levels. My doctor and I both understood that I was deployable on this medication, but that if there was a reason that I needed to stop taking the medication, unavailability or whatever the case may be, that would be okay, that I would still be able to serve, and that the effects on me would not be detrimental for short periods of time. Eventually, for me, I decided that with my doctor that I did need other forms of care, and so I did elect for surgical procedures. And when we talk about those procedures, we talk about, rather than talking about the procedures, I think it's important to talk about how trans service members approach them.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my unit's training schedule. I looked at what I had going on, and I scheduled a medical procedure to happen after we had finished our battalion live fire exercises so that I could go to battalion live fire exercises. And during the downtime, I scheduled it in November. And why would a soldier schedule their procedure in November? Well, they'd schedule it because they know they're going to have 2 weeks of leave during Christmas anyways.
Yeah.
And scheduling it at the end of November means the unit probably didn't have as much going on. They were in a slow period of time, and that would give me the opportunity to heal and recover so that when we started doing squad exercises again in the end of February, I was ready to go. So the thing about this is because it's not a broken leg. It's something that you have the ability to schedule around unit readiness and to make sure that it doesn't take you out of the fight at the wrong time. And that's the value of having a doctor, a unit command, and a service member all determining the right treatment at the right time. I wasn't undeployable for any period of time that the unit was busy. And as soon as they were ready to be busy again, so was I.
And that is putting the mission first, putting your squad first, putting, that unit first. That right there, I've seen multiple times to where, in having at one point having to deal with a platoon, and getting the taskings, but then having to deal with the guys that were like, well, I'm getting my wisdom teeth pulled or I'm going to dental. And it's like, why would you put it in the middle of there? Like, talk to me first. Like, if you have a problem, like, let's get it scheduled around there. But being proactive about that and getting that done, that's, it says a
We're
lot.
in the infantry. Come on, how many folks have you seen that used a vasectomy as an opportunity for a long weekend? Right?
I know on myself for one of them, I think there was a gap, but it was just to where I had my wisdom teeth pulled. So it'll give you a nice 3 days a weekend. They throw you some Vicodin or whatever for the pain. I didn't take any of it. Didn't need it. But, it was like, that was how I had to get a 3 or 4 day weekend, for my birthday. I was like, all right, let's pull these wisdom teeth. So I could see where someone would make a situation ripe for abuse, but good on you for, that is right there the epitome of what a good soldier is looking at that and taking the initiative to be like, all right, I don't want to put my unit out. So this is what I'm going to do in order to make sure that nobody's down a man, nobody's down another service member. And, we can get back into the fight quicker, and more efficiently, which is
that's not about trans. That's about leaders, right? That's just what leaders do. The average transgender service member has between 12 and 21 years of experience. Think about that. Most of them have over a decade. They're well vested. They're tenured, and they have a decade of leadership time. They have a decade of running exercises, of institutional knowledge. They've been to schools. I have transgender service members who I've spoken to that the Army paid them to go to Baylor to become a physical therapist.
Oh, wow.
Another one that the Army paid them to go to get a master's degree program in mathematics so that they could go teach at West Point. You know, the Army, the DoD has invested in these service members. They've invested time, money, and training, and those service members are just there to do their job. You know, after a decade of doing this, they're not there for any reason other than their love of service and country.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's such a shame to be able to like, or for them to just discount that knowledge base, and all of that work that's been done and be like, nope, no more. Why? And to remove them from the community that they've grown in, and they've grown around these soldiers, they've built up, that's their friend base, that's their support base. And then just, sorry, you don't have a job anymore. Yeah, to me, it's downright criminal, honestly.
Think about beyond our service. Well, think about the stepping stones towards financial security that we have. Maybe you've used a VA loan where you had the benefit of a lower credit score and no down payment, right? Maybe you've used your GI Bill and achieved a bachelor's degree that helped to springboard you. Maybe you're a veteran who has relied on your veterans health care for you and your family. Those things are not temporary. Those things are permanent stepping stones towards generational wealth.
Yes.
And not only that, but we take a class of people, a group of people, and say, all of you are not fit. You're less than this group of people in uniform, and you're not right to be there. And we tell society that these people aren't fit to wear the uniform. They're less than. There's something deficient about them.
Mm-hmm.
That is just so detrimental to a community of people who already feels under attack.
Oh, I know. That's actually one of the things that I know we spoke before about this, but in seeing some of the correlations, between Germany and the community there in between the 1920s and 30s, right there up until 33, thriving community there. And not only were the Jews, like, people don't realize this. I did realize that, the Jews were persecuted, that big group of people within Germany, but blacks, Hispanics, trans people, and the amount of just, oh man, horrific things that were done to them, not, in the concentration camps, and like reading some of the stories, I was in tears, in absolute tears. And like, this is like Jewish people coming back with this, like saying trans people within the camps and stuff were treated so much worse than us, and the things that they saw done to them in front of them, treated less than human. And this is the same type of rhetoric, this is the same type of behavior, and it's terrifying to see that, to take this smaller community and be like, you know what, they're a smaller community, they're on the rise, but we just don't seem, we don't get it, we don't feel that they can serve, we are going to cut them off the knees, basically, right here. And it really has to do with, it sounds like to me, a lot of out there is just ignorance.
Yeah, you mentioned a few things that are really important to note there. First of all, that means the trans people have been around at least since World War II, right? Probably longer. If we're going to acknowledge that trans people have been around for a long time. The world has evolved in how we can present ourselves and how we understand gender. But those feelings that exist, they've existed for a long time, and you can't legislate them away. As we found out in the 1930s and 40s, you can't shove them away and make it disappear. That's not how it works. The second thing that you mentioned is that stigmatization of trans people has been around for a very long time. For a long time, we've not understood it, It forces us to question our understanding of gender and masculinity, and that is uncomfortable for us, and it's easier to stigmatize it. And the last thing you mentioned is that throughout history, there have been opportunities to look at small groups who struggle to defend themselves and to marginalize them further for personal gain,
Yeah.
whether it be people in the prison system, whether it be children, the elderly, immigrants, or trans folks in uniform. We are small groups who struggle to have a voice and allies, and we can be easy to target.
Yeah. That is definitely one of the concerns. I know my area, where I live in Maryland, there is, it's not, unless you go down more southern Maryland, um, I don't know of any, I don't see any trans people around here. I don't see any community stuff up in the northern side of Maryland. I'm sure there is, uh, but it's just,
For trans rural folks, they really can't have that same level of representation. There you find it in the Midwest. You find that there are trans people everywhere.
yeah,
There are trans people everywhere, but in some places there is a much more fear of being yourself. There are places where there are safety concerns, where there are familial concerns, community concerns, where political ideologies ring loudly with big signs, and it makes you feel as though you may not be safe to be yourself in a particular area. Uh, and for those people, uh, they don't have the freedom, the luxury, or even the safety to have a conversation like we're having right now.
yeah, yeah. And that's also like, I mean, so what would your advice be, uh, to somebody right now? I mean, I know that there is, people are voicing things about it. There's the right side, but then there's also the far right side, who you're going to see a rise in discrimination. You're going to see a rise in violence. I, I, I hope to God not, honestly. Um, and but just seeing some of the writing on the wall here, and seeing the reactions from some of the people, and seeing also, some of the people, and I know I've seen anger towards that community, which is unnecessary. It's unfounded. And again, a lot of ignorance out there as to who these people are, what they stand for, what their ideology is, and stuff. And again, the whole reason why I wanted to have you on the show is to put a face here and go, look, this is a person. This is, a citizen of America. These are American ideas, ideals. Uh, this should be a country to where you're free to be, anything you want to be, as long as you're not breaking the law, but like, where is there an issue with you at all? Why should there be? This is, so, I mean, really, what are your thoughts there as to how can someone kind of protect themselves? How can someone kind of be more aware, in the coming day and age right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting question you pose. No matter what executive orders, no matter what legislation through Congress, no matter what happens in the court system, the next day, first and foremost, I'm still going to be transgender. Now, if I couldn't find a way to change it while I was struggling with it as a young person, you're not going to find a way to change it through your legal efforts. This is who I am. And now I'm proud of who I am. The person who I am has had the accomplishments that I've had, uh, and while we don't understand everything, we do know that you can't legislate people back into the closet. You can't make people disappear. As for that trans person who's scared right now, I'm scared too. And it's okay for us to acknowledge that. But we got to do a few things. First of all, we have to take care of ourselves. I can't be in this fight if I don't take care of my mental health. I can't be in this fight if I don't take care of my physical health. And we need everybody to be in this fight, right? That's an infantryman's mindset.
Yeah.
So the first thing you have to take care of is yourself. The second thing you need to do is take care of and connect with your battle buddies, whether it be online, whether it be in person, whether it be with a small group. You need to connect with people who you can feel safe with, who you can commiserate with, who you can vent to. You need people who you can develop ideas with, and so that you don't feel alone. Because the goal is to make you feel isolated and alone, and you're not. And the last thing I would tell you is that it's time to develop our lines of effort, right? That's an infantry term too. It's time for us to look at how we can get involved. For some, it may be volunteering for one of those suicide prevention hotlines or in a nonprofit organization. For some, it may be understanding that every time a rule is passed in the government, there's a comment window, and every one of us has an opportunity to write a comment about that rule, and then they have to review all of those comments. So perhaps it's about being civically involved and finding those rules and writing comments. Maybe it's about donating to an organization, a legal fund or something to help fight the issues that matter to you. But you can't do nothing. After you've taken care of yourself and connected with your battle buddies, it's time to act, because the administration is acting, and we
Yeah.
can't simply wait.
Yeah. No, and that's absolutely great advice right there. You know, be seen. You are seen, but be seen. Comment. Be out there. Write letters. Be involved in the community and stuff. And
And do what
as
you
far as
can
that
do.
one, right? Oh,
If you're not do what you can do. If you're not safe to come out, if you're not safe to be open, then don't risk your safety. You have to do what's right and what's safe for you.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the communities to where people can kind of be pointed to, you know, that you have had experience with and that you know of out there?
Yeah. If you're a transgender service member, and you are serving openly, you're serving in the closet, you have questions about your identity, there's an organization called Sparta. Sparta is the largest transgender military service organization in the country. And you can reach out to them, and they'll find you a place. They'll find you those battle buddies so that you don't feel like you're all alone. And they can help you to navigate these complicated times. Modern Military Association is another great organization. It is all things LGBTQ plus for military service members, veterans, and family members. That's a great outlet for those who are within the larger military community. You can look at organizations like A4T, Lambda Legal, HRC. All of these are great organizations for folks who are in the civilian community. And if you are looking to serve and you have questions about how this might affect you, you can also reach out to Sparta.
What could you add to this conversation to kind of like, I guess, enlighten as to some of the issues faced within that and some of the struggles that you faced personally in there, and see the community facing very, you know, I mean, right now as well as in the future?
So that's an interesting question.
That was a lot loaded in there too. I'm
There was a
sorry for
lot.
that.
That was
We can
kind of
break this
open.
down.
Yeah, what would I want to add? So, first of all, I think that before we go in there, throw out some bona fides and we can wrap a little bit. I did testify before Congress,
Hmm.
but I also arrived in Afghanistan on Christmas Day 2001. I served there until April of 2002. And had the opportunity to serve with amazing service members during the initial invasion of Afghanistan.
I was going to say, you had 3 combat deployments, right? Like,
yeah, that's exactly right. I went back to Afghanistan in 2003 and then again in 2013. But the initial invasion in Afghanistan and testifying in Congress against the initial ban have similarities, right? This was uncharted territory. We didn't know what to expect, and we felt isolated and alone. I was in a mountainous region. I'd been dropped off by a Chinook. I had to slide out the back of it onto a mountain. That's tenuous times, right? Climbing a mountain with a saw, that's tenuous time. With a squad operated weapon, that's tenuous times. Showing up to Washington, D.C., and sitting down to a panel of Congress members asking you whether you're fit to serve and asking you why you're fit to serve. That's tenuous times. That is not something that the manual prepares you for. Um, but the thing is that my military service has prepared me for this. These transgender service members, their military service, their leadership experience, their resiliency experience has prepared them for this. Um, and their identity as trans people has prepared them for their military service. Their courage under fire, their resilience, this is what's prepared them for this. Right now, transgender service members still don't know what this executive order will mean.
Yeah.
Just as we did in 2018. We didn't know what the executive order would mean exactly. It doesn't mean right now that transgender people are being ejected from the military, but it's laid a groundwork for what this could potentially look like. We could see reductions in medical care. We could see bars to re-enlistment. We could see bars to enlistment. And then we could see different understanding of medical diagnosis lead to potential separations, but we don't know what that looks like yet. And what's important for us to exercise right now is that tactical patience that we learn as service members. We have to slow down. We have to react to what's in front of us and not speculate about what things are going to look like. Invariably, within the next 60 days or so, we're going to see a policy come out of the Department of Defense. And then we're going to have to evaluate that policy and what it means for those service members, what the legal hurdles are, and what avenues we have to advocate for and protect those service members who just want to do their job. And that's what we learned in 2018, and that's what we're seeing now. That's what we learned the last time there was a Trump ban, and that's what we're seeing now. We learned that you have to exercise tactical patience, and you have to wait for the situation to develop, and then action on the lines of effort.
Yeah, that's I know too is I jumped on with oh man, one of the VA coordinators, and I was asking like, what do you foresee? Is there anything coming down the pipeline there? And it was literally they got back to me, but they were like, I don't know. So there's a lot of crickets out there right now. So I mean, yeah, take a knee. What's the thing we're taught in the infantry SEALs? Like, you know, you look, listen, your surroundings, you know, but it is combined with what you were saying earlier to be active, be out there, you know, but also be aware. Don't jump to conclusions on stuff. You know, where do you see that end? You know, because even if they just eject 15,000 service members, that means the VA. You know, what's going to happen there? You know, there's no guidance yet there. They haven't started attacking that, to my knowledge, yet. But this is a system to where they've promised care. They've promised to the service members and stuff that we are going to take care of you medically. No matter what. And then you start seeing, you know, economist articles saying that disabled veterans are getting too much pay, which is insane because I know quite a few. The deployment I was on had over a 50% casualty rate. And the amount of TBIs, limbs missing, and other issues that I've seen within the guys that were there is, it's crippling, you know, absolutely horrible. And to hear that from there and to hear that possibly being under attack, yeah, that is just, you know, it's, you know, where do we even put any trust in our government at this point? They might say one thing and then they do another. And that's just, well, you know, the involvement that's needed from other veterans out there, especially within that government side and within the policymakers and everything, is just astounding. Like, we need to be out there as veterans, much more than we are. I know that decline in that, you know, so I mean, I know I'm kind of blending everything here, but that is, you know, we are looking at a possible funding cut within the VA as well, like a harsh one. And I see that this is possible again, like you were saying, the putting under the guise of, well, we're cutting costs.
Right. You know, first of all, there are 0 veterans who are receiving any of their disability because they're trans. That is not part of a disability percentage.
Yeah.
You know, no, veterans like myself who received trans care in the military, I do receive trans care through the VA. And now maybe I have to wonder whether or not that trans care will continue. That's an uncomfortable feeling, right?
Yeah.
can, again, that notion that this is medical care, that all of the major medical organizations within our country, from the American Medical Association to the American Psychological Association, all deem trans care to be safe and effective and the right course of treatment. There are doctors within the VA whose Hippocratic oath tells them that the right thing to do is to treat these patients to do no harm. And now those doctors are going to be the ones who are having to deal with that difficult decision, who are going to have to tell their patients, I can't treat you for this thing, even though we both feel like that's what I should be doing.
Yeah.
That's potentially terrifying for thousands of veterans. As you mentioned, the average citizen in the United States is about 10% likely to be a veteran. And the average transgender citizen in the United States is about 19% likely to be a veteran. So we do serve at a higher propensity despite being a small population. That's a lot of folks looking to receive care. On the other side of that, as we've discussed institutional knowledge, it's not simply the trans service members who suffer, right? If Olivia Stellick, the trans service member I mentioned, who is an Army physical therapist, trained at Baylor, paid for by the United States Army, if we remove her from the force, who takes her patient? If we remove Olivia, who provides physical therapy to her patients? If we remove Gordon, the Army service member I mentioned who is trained in mathematics and going to teach at West Point, do we provide a substitute math teacher at West Point? Who's going to teach those West Point students? When we pull a squad leader off the line, do we just tell the team leader it's your job to take charge and you've run a man down? Transgender service members, thousands of them, will be affected by this. But the ripple effect through the military will be felt so much further. Pilots, intelligence analysts, ISR specialists, linguists, combat arms specialists, folks in all branches of service are going to be told that their service is less valuable. But the job that they do is not going to be instantly filled. The expertise that they have, the vacancies that they create, those are going to affect not just them, but our national security.
This falls under stuff on that whole trust issue and stuff. And if you look at how Afghanistan ended and stuff as well, and how, we're looking at possibly other wars going on in the very near future. I mean, there's already fights going on through proxies and through special operations has a whole different world that people aren't even aware of. There's just constant conflict going around the globe. But if we're not only abandoning our allies in there, like Afghanistan, now we're abandoning our own service members, and it's shameful. Honestly,
it's easy to say you don't want me. It's easy to say you don't want me when we're not currently in conflict. But as we saw with people of color in the Civil War, as we've seen with women in World War II, when the fight comes, we stop worrying about who you are and we start worrying about what you can do. Yep. When the fight arrives, do you really want to tell me you don't want me there because I'm trans? Or do you want another rifle in the fight?
Yeah, and somebody dedicated with as much, passion towards that side of leadership and towards service for their country. That is right there alone. That's a big difference. I mean, you could tell between the people within your squad. Anybody asks me, is there anybody that you would take into this fight? Sight unseen, unknown number of whatever. You just know it's going to be a hell of a fight, and I can point right back to that deployment and be like, I know exactly who I'd want by my side, and to hear that, if they were to go in there and remove that person, what are you replacing it with? Somebody with less experience, a Joe, you're down. You're severely hampering your squad, your unit. Again, yeah. I mean, this is just, it could be on repeat, and it's sad to hear.
And none of the service members, I've heard from people I deployed with since coming out, and I imagine that the ones who maybe felt differently wouldn't have reached out to me, but I've had service members who I deployed with reach out, and reiterated what you and I were just talking about, that they said, I was proud to have served with you, and what I found out didn't change that I would have wanted you there. And to take that a step further, Will, you had a deployment where, as you mentioned, you took heavy losses. If the medic that had showed up to take care of one of your service members was trans, you wouldn't have yelled, "I need a cisgender medic." You would have just said, "I need a medic."
Yeah, medic.
That medic, regardless of their gender identity, their race, their religion, they're there to treat soldiers. And that rifleman, he's there to put rounds down range. She's there to put rounds down range. It's crazy to me, for those of us who have served, for those of us who have gone through difficult times in the military, we think back to those difficult times and we think, my goodness, nothing about the transgender conversation changes what I went through. Nothing, and it wouldn't change what I went through. I would just want the best and brightest.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, again, like the people that I had reached out to, I said, hey, have you, the question I had asked was, have you had any experience working with anybody who is transgender in your military, service, the ones that stayed past and everything. A lot of them after that deployment, they just scattered. After that deployment, they were done. They were just like, I am not staying in this anymore. And a lot of them left service. I mean, I continued on in a different capacity. But the people that I asked, one of the things that came back, I had a PA who was a 6'2", 6'2" with a Ranger tab who was transgender. Great PA. I received awesome medical care and everything else. I have no issue with him. It's like, anything else? No. Some people were lesbians within my infantry unit. But that was it, and it's women are serving in the military too. And I even went to ask there, and I had my own experience in serving with somebody on that particular deployment, who was homosexual. And I'll go back into it. Nobody cared. It didn't make any difference in the world. And this was even before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and everybody knew. He wasn't like openly flamboyant or anything, but if he had been, honestly, everybody knew and nobody cared. That didn't make the difference. That wasn't what mattered. What mattered was who they were, what effort they were putting forward, and how they helped accomplish the mission.
Exactly right, because that's the only thing that matters when you're downrange.
Exactly. But Patricia, is there anything that you can leave us with before we sign off on this one?
Yeah, we are preparing for a deliberate defense. We know that this is going to be a long fight on many fronts. To everybody out there, it's important to take care of yourself. Veterans of all stripes, it's important that we take care of ourselves. It's important that we support one another and that we be ready for whatever comes next.
Yeah, take those skills of resilience and stuff that you've learned along the way and dig your heels in and put it to use, because what you've been saying, trans people aren't going anywhere. They're here to stay. And, it's a bit of a fight, but when has there not been, right?
Yeah, there's always something.
Trisha, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to have you on the show. Hang tight for a minute because I wanted to talk to you afterwards, but we'll get right back into it after. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Veteran Success Story. I hope the information here has been valuable to you, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I don't really like the situation in which this episode was recorded, especially on last minute. This was literally the day before this all happened, to where those executive orders were signed. But it's something that I feel that this episode needs to be out there. This voice needs to be out there, and these issues need to be heard. This is something that you live in America. We're Americans. These are freedoms. These are freedoms that have been given and are now slowly being eroded and stripped away from a certain segment of our population. So this is about awareness for this particular episode. Again, you can think whatever you want about it. That's your right. but you can't turn a blind eye to the issue, or at least I hope you don't. So thank you for joining us. Follow and subscribe for more episodes. We have a lot more coming up along the way. I have some great ones, but I actually wanted to put some stuff on hold in order to get this one out there due to immediacy. So thank you for joining me, and join us next week for yet another veteran success story.